Ines Solana arrived at Lincoln High School on a Tuesday morning in late August, when the Colorado heat still clung to the Front Range foothills like a desperate promise of summer. The building stretched across 3 city blocks of Denver's northwest side, a sprawling brick fortress of education that housed 2,000 students who moved through its corridors with the practiced indifference of those who belonged. She did not belong. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. Her documentation said she was here for the academic year, a foreign exchange student from Madrid placed with the Hendricks family through some program her mother had insisted would broaden her horizons. What the documentation did not say was that Ines had already seen more of the world than most of these American teenagers would see in their lifetimes, that her horizons had been broadened in ways that left scars, that she carried secrets in the controlled way she moved through space. The main hallway smelled of industrial cleaner and teenage anxiety. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a flat, unkind illumination. Lockers lined both walls, painted in alternating panels of school colors, blue and gold that had faded to gray and mustard. Students clustered in tribal formations, their social hierarchies invisible to outsiders, but clearly marked to those who knew the codes. Ines walked through them like a ghost, clutching her class schedule, trying to ignore how her footsteps echoed differently than everyone else's, how her clothes, carefully chosen to blend in, somehow still marked her as foreign. "Excuse me?" she said to a girl with blonde hair scraped into a severe ponytail. "Could you tell me where is room 217? The girl looked at her, eyebrows raised. "Where is room 217? She repeated, mimicking Ines's accent with exaggerated precision, rolling the R absurdly. Her friends, 3 other girls who looked like variations on the same theme, dissolved into laughter. "God, where are you even from?" "Spain." Ines kept her voice level, professional. This was not the first time. It would not be the last. "The pain," one of the other girls lisped, and they all laughed harder, the sound sharp and performative. "That's so exotic. Can you say something in Spanish for us?" Ines felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the old instinct rising like muscle memory. Her right hand wanted to form a fist. Her stance wanted to shift, weight moving to the balls of her feet. Instead, she forced herself to smile politely. "The room number?" she asked again. "Down the hall, up the stairs, 2nd floor. Can't miss it," the blonde said dismissively, already turning back to her friends. As Ines walked away, she heard them dissolve into whispered laughter, and she knew with absolute certainty that this was how it would be. Room 217 was American literature with Mrs. Patterson, a tired-looking woman whose eyes suggested she had been teaching longer than she had been alive. Ines slipped into a seat near the back, trying to make herself small, and pulled out her notebook. The other students filed in with the casual chaos of those who had known each other for years, inside jokes flowing like a language she would never fully speak. "All right, settle down," Mrs. Patterson called over the noise. "We have a new student joining us today. This is—" She consulted her roster, squinting at the name. "Inez, is that right?" "Ines," Ines corrected gently, standing because she sensed it was expected. "Ines Solana, from Madrid." "Welcome to Lincoln," Mrs. Patterson said with forced brightness. "Why don't you tell us a little about yourself?" This was a trap. Ines knew it instinctively. Every eye in the classroom turned toward her with the predatory focus of teenagers who had identified potential prey. She kept her expression neutral, her shoulders relaxed in a way that took conscious effort. "I am here for 1 year with the exchange program," she said carefully, trying to smooth the edges of her accent, knowing it was impossible. "I like to read, to run, and I hope to learn more about American culture." Someone in the third row made a sound that might have been a cough, but was definitely not a cough. A boy with a football jersey, number 42, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "That accent," he stage whispered to his neighbor, just loud enough for Ines to hear. "Sounds like she's got marbles in her mouth." More laughter, quickly suppressed when Mrs. Patterson shot them a warning look. But the damage was done. Ines had been marked. She sat down, opened her notebook, and focused on writing the date in the corner with exaggerated care, each number perfectly formed, giving her hands something to do besides shake. The morning progressed in a series of small humiliations. In chemistry, she mispronounced aluminum, and the lab table next to hers spent 10 minutes testing different ways to make it sound more ridiculous. In world history, the irony was not lost on her. She raised her hand to correct a factual error about the Spanish Civil War and was met with exaggerated applause and someone muttering, "Teacher's pet," with unmistakable venom. By lunch, she had learned to keep her mouth shut unless directly called upon, and even then, to answer in as few words as possible. The cafeteria was a vast space of round tables and long benches, windows along one wall, looking out onto the football field where summer grass was already browning in patches. The air was thick with the smell of institutional food, something tomato-based, something fried, something sweet. Ines bought a bottle of water and a pre-made sandwich that looked safer than the hot lunch options, then stood at the edge of the seating area, scanning for an empty table. There were none. Every surface was claimed by groups who had staked their territory through years of repetition. She settled for the far end of a half-empty table where a few students hunched over phones, deliberately not making eye contact with anyone. She was halfway through her sandwich when she felt the presence approach. "Hey, Ines!" It was the boy from English class, the one with the football jersey. Up close, he was bigger than she had initially assessed. At least 6 feet, broad shoulders, the kind of build that came from both genetics and hours in the weight room. His hair was styled with too much product, and his eyes held the particular confidence of someone who had never been seriously challenged. Behind him stood 2 other boys in matching jerseys, numbers 28 and 16, forming a wall of athletic masculinity. "Is Ines," she corrected quietly, not looking up from her sandwich. Right, Ines." He drew out the pronunciation mockingly. "I'm Trent Keller. This is my school. Well, my dad's school, technically. He's on the school board. Just wanted to welcome you properly to America." His tone suggested this welcome would be anything but welcoming. Ines set down her sandwich, folded her hands in her lap, where they could not betray her, and looked up at him with as neutral an expression as she could manufacture. "Thank you," she said simply. "Wow, so polite. Is that like a Spanish thing, being all formal and shit?" He slid onto the bench across from her without invitation, his friends flanking him. "Say something in Spanish for us. Come on, just a little phrase." "I would prefer not to." "Oh, don't be shy." Trent leaned forward, elbows on the table. His cologne was overwhelming, something expensive trying too hard. "We're all friends here." "Right, guys." The boys behind him nodded, their faces showing varying degrees of amusement and discomfort. Number 28, his Letterman jacket said Morrison, seemed to be enjoying this more than 16, whose expression suggested he might have a conscience buried somewhere under peer pressure. "Come on, just one sentence. Make it fun. Say..." Trent paused, thinking. "Say, Trent is the best football player at Lincoln High." The nearby tables had gone quiet, watching the exchange with the fascinated attention usually reserved for car crashes. Ines felt her face heating, the familiar pressure building behind her sternum. In her mind, she calculated distances, angles, vulnerabilities. She knew exactly how this could go if she let it. She knew where to strike, to make him unable to speak, unable to breathe, unable to look at her with that arrogant smirk. She knew because her brother Mateo had taught her when she was 14 and he was 17, in a gym in Barcelona where the walls were covered with posters of fighters and the air always smelled of sweat and determination. But Mateo was dead. He had died in a stupid street fight outside a club in Ibiza, proving something to someone who did not matter. And she had promised him, had promised over his hospital bed while machines beeped their inadequate rhythms, that she would never use what he taught her unless her life depended on it, that she would not end up like him, proud and dead at 19. So instead of striking, instead of making Trent Keller understand exactly how much danger he was in, Ines stood up, gathered her trash, and walked away. Behind her she heard laughter and someone imitating her walk, adding an exaggerated hip sway that was not there. She threw her lunch away without eating most of it, left the cafeteria, and found a bathroom on the second floor, where she locked herself in a stall and pressed her palms against her thighs until they stopped trembling. The afternoon brought no relief. In physical education, her schedule said she was assigned to fourth period PE with Coach Braddock, a former college linebacker who now spent his days forcing teenagers to run laps. She changed into the required uniform and stood in line for attendance. Trent Keller was there. Of course he was, because the universe had no mercy. He noticed her immediately. "Hey, everyone. We got ourselves a foreign exchange athlete," he announced to the assembled class. "Think she knows how to play American football, or maybe she's more into like bullfighting or some shit." "That is not a sport," Ines said before she could stop herself. "It is animal cruelty." "Oh, she talks back, spicy little Spanish girl." Trent grinned at his own terrible joke. "All right then, what sports do they play in Spain, besides running from bulls?" "Football," Ines said quietly, "the one you call soccer." This prompted exactly the reaction she expected. Groans, dismissive laughter, someone yelling that soccer was not a real sport. Coach Braddock blew his whistle sharply, cutting through the noise. "All right, enough, Keller. Shut it. Everyone, 4 laps around the track, then we're doing team drills. Move!" The track encircled the football field, a quarter-mile loop of rubberized surface that absorbed the late summer heat and reflected it back up in waves. Ines ran, finding her rhythm immediately, her breathing controlled and even. Running was safe. Running required no words, no accent, no explanations. She let her mind drift while her body worked, remembering other runs in other places, along the Mediterranean coast, near her grandmother's house in Valencia, through the narrow streets of Madrid's old quarter before dawn, when the city was still sleeping, on the beach in Thailand during the year her father had been stationed there for work, when Mateo had trained her in Muay Thai at a gym where foreigners were rare and respect was earned through sweat. She finished the 4 laps ahead of most of the class, her breathing barely elevated, and only realized her mistake when she saw Trent Keller's expression. He had finished shortly after her, and he did not like being beaten, especially not by the foreign girl with the funny accent. "Well, well," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "Guess they teach you to run away really fast in Spain." Ines said nothing. She was learning that silence was the safest response. The team drills were flag football, and when Coach Braddock called out teams, Ines found herself on the opposite side from Trent, which should have been a relief, but somehow felt more dangerous. The game was casual, half-hearted, most students not particularly invested in the outcome. But Trent played like it was the state championship, directing his team with barked commands, showing off for the handful of students who seemed to actually care about his performance. Ines played defense, covering receivers, staying out of the main action. She was good at being invisible. She had practiced it her whole life in a dozen different countries, daughter of a diplomat, always the new girl, always learning to read the room before she opened her mouth, but good instincts could only protect you so far. It happened in the 3rd quarter, if this chaotic mess could be called quarters. Trent had the ball, saw an opening, and ran straight through the middle of the defense. Ines was there, in his path, And she should have let him pass. She should have made a token effort to pull his flag and failed. Instead, her body moved on instinct. She shifted her weight, reached for the flag with perfect technique, and pulled it cleanly, stopping him cold 3 yards from a touchdown. The silence lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then Coach Braddock blew his whistle. "Excellent defensive play, Solana. That's how it's done." Inez's stomach dropped. She had made another mistake. She had been visible. Trent walked past her back to the line, close enough that his shoulder brushed hers, harder than necessary, but not enough to be called a foul. "Nice try, Spanish," he muttered, his voice low and mean. "But you just made a big fucking mistake." The rest of PE passed without further incident, but Inez felt the weight of eyes on her, felt the target on her back growing. By the time the final bell rang and students flooded toward the parking lot or the bus loop, she had developed a headache that pulsed behind her left eye in time with her heartbeat. She found the city bus stop 2 blocks from the school, sat on the bench with her backpack on her lap, and waited. The Hendricks family had offered to pick her up on her first day, but she had declined, wanting to learn the route herself, wanting some independence, even in this foreign place. The bus was half empty, mostly older people and women with small children. She took a seat near the back, pressed her forehead against the window, and watched Denver scroll past. Strip malls and auto shops and neighborhoods that all looked the same. The Hendricks lived in a modest, split-level house in Arvada, the kind of suburban development where every house was a slight variation on 3 basic designs. Sharon Hendricks was a nurse who worked nights, and Tom Hendricks was an accountant who made dad jokes and seemed genuinely kind. Their daughter, Claire, was in college, her childhood bedroom now converted to Inez's temporary home. They had tried to make her feel welcome, had stocked the fridge with things they thought Spanish people might eat, had put fresh flowers on the dresser. They meant well, but they could not protect her from what was coming. "How was your first day?" Sharon asked when Inez came in through the garage. She was in the kitchen, preparing her meal before her night shift, wearing scrubs printed with cartoon cats. "It was fine," Inez said, because what else could she say? That she had been mocked for her accent, that she had already made an enemy of the most powerful boy in school, that she was counting down the days until she could return to Spain. "The teachers are very nice." "That's wonderful. And did you make any friends?" "Not yet. But perhaps soon." Sharon smiled, satisfied with this answer, and Inez escaped upstairs to her room, closed the door, and finally allowed herself to breathe. She set her backpack on the desk chair, pulled out her phone, and opened the Messages app. Her mother had sent 3 texts asking about her day, each punctuated with excessive emojis. Her father had sent one, "Orgullosa de ti, mija." "Proud of you, my daughter." She typed responses that were truthful without being honest, then set the phone aside and moved to the narrow space between her bed and the wall. This had been her ritual for 3 years now. Every day, no matter what, she practiced. Not to fight, never to fight, but to remember. To honor Mateo's memory by keeping the skills he had given her sharp, even as she honored his death by never using them. She moved through the combinations slowly, precisely. Jab, cross, hook, checking her form in the small mirror above the dresser. Teep, roundhouse, knee, the Muay Thai movements fluid despite the confined space. Then on the floor, drilling the basic positions Mateo had made her repeat thousands of times. Guard, mount escape, technical stand-up, shrimping. Her body remembered what her mind tried to forget. Halfway through her routine, her phone buzzed, an Instagram notification. She should have ignored it, but curiosity won. Someone had tagged her in a story. She opened the app with a growing sense of dread, and there it was, a video taken in the cafeteria, shot from several tables away, but with surprisingly clear audio. Her own voice saying, "I would prefer not to." Trent Keller's mocking response, and then a caption overlaid in obnoxious font: "New foreign exchange student doesn't understand American hospitality," with 3 crying, laughing emojis. It had been viewed 400 times already, 37 comments, none of them kind. Inez closed the app, set her phone face down on the desk, and returned to her training. Jab, cross, hook, breathe, teep, roundhouse knee, breathe. By the time she finished, sweat darkened her shirt, and her headache had receded to a manageable level. She showered, ate dinner with Tom Hendricks, who asked enthusiastic questions about Spanish architecture, and went to bed early, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about tomorrow. Tomorrow came anyway, as it always did. Wednesday morning, Inez dressed with care, choosing clothes that were aggressively neutral, and made the bus ride to Lincoln High with a stone in her stomach. The building looked different in the early light, less fortress-like, almost pretty in the way morning sun hit the brick. But the illusion dissolved the moment she entered. "Hey, Spanish!" She did not know the boy's name, number 28 from yesterday, Morrison's jersey, but he knew hers, or at least his version of it. He was standing with a group near the main entrance, all football players based on their builds and the casual arrogance in their postures. They watched her walk past with the focused attention of boys who had decided she was interesting in a way that made her skin crawl. In her locker, she found a note. It was printed on plain paper, folded once. "Go home." Just those 2 words, succinct, effective. She threw it away, got her books for first period, and told herself this was temporary. 1 year. She could survive 1 year of anything. English class brought a new torture. Mrs. Patterson, perhaps thinking she was being inclusive, asked Inez to read aloud from The Great Gatsby. She should have declined, should have claimed a sore throat, anything. Instead, she read, her accent wrapping around Fitzgerald's prose in ways that made the text sound foreign, wrong. When she finished the passage, barely 3 paragraphs, there was a smattering of applause that was clearly ironic. Trent Keller was grinning. "That was beautiful," he said, managing to make it sound like an insult. "Really brought new life to the text, you know." Mrs. Patterson frowned. "That's enough, Trent." But it was not enough. It would never be enough. At lunch, Inez bought her food and headed for the same table as yesterday, only to find it completely occupied, every seat taken by students who avoided her gaze. She stood there for a long moment, holding her tray, feeling the cafeteria's attention like a physical pressure. Finally, she spotted an empty chair at a table near the windows, occupied by students who looked younger, less intimidating. She approached cautiously. "Is this seat taken?" They looked at her, then at each other, some silent communication passing between them. One girl with glasses and a hijab shrugged. "Sure, go ahead." Inez sat, grateful for small mercies. The conversation at the table died, but at least no one was actively mocking her. She ate her sandwich, the same pre-made variety as yesterday, and stared out the window at the football field, wishing she could be anywhere else. "You're the exchange student, right?" "From Spain?" Inez turned. The girl with the hijab was looking at her with something that might have been sympathy. "Yes, I am Inez. I'm Fatima." "Don't let them get to you. The football guys, I mean. They think they run the school." "Do they not?" Fatima laughed, short and sharp. "Pretty much, yeah. But that doesn't mean you have to make it easy for them." It was the closest thing to kindness Inez had experienced since arriving, and she felt something loosen in her chest. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I appreciate that." "No problem. Just word of advice. Keep your head down around Trent Keller. His dad really is on the school board, and Trent's been untouchable since middle school. He's not used to people standing up to him." "I did not stand up to him. I just pulled his flag in PE." Fatima's expression turned sympathetic. "Yeah, that's enough. The rest of the week confirmed Fatima's warning. It started small, shoulders bumping Ines in the hallway hard enough to make her drop her books. Her locker door accidentally slammed when she was reaching inside, someone stepping on the back of her shoes so they came off. Then it escalated. On Thursday, she found her gym clothes missing from her locker and had to sit out PE in her regular clothes, earning a lecture from Coach Braddock about being prepared. On Friday, someone posted her class schedule on Instagram with the caption, "Find the tourist," and suggestions about which classes to visit to see the foreign entertainment. Ines said nothing. She kept her head down, spoke only when called upon, tried to make herself invisible. But invisibility was impossible when you were the only person in a school of 2,000 with a Spanish accent. The mocking of how she spoke became a running joke. Students would exaggerate their R roles when talking near her, would say "hola" in passing, would ask her to say specific English words just to hear how she pronounced them. In chemistry, her lab partner made her ask for equipment just so he could record it and play it back at higher speed, making her sound like a cartoon character. By the end of her first week at Lincoln High School, Ines Solana understood that she had entered a war she had not chosen against an enemy who had already decided she was not worthy of basic dignity. And every night, alone in her room at the Hendricks house, she practiced her combinations with increasing intensity, the promise to Mateo growing heavier with each passing day. The second week brought a subtle shift in the harassment. It became more organized, more public, more performative. Trent Keller had recruited more followers, not just football players, but students from various social circles who sensed opportunity in aligning themselves with power. Ines learned to recognize them by their expressions, the particular mixture of cruelty and cowardice that marked those who hurt others only when backed by a crowd. Monday morning, someone had changed her name in the student information system. Every teacher reading attendance called out "Ines the tourist" before correcting themselves. Some teachers found it amusing, others were too harried to care. By third period, it was school-wide knowledge. People she had never spoken to knew her as the tourist. At lunch, she sat with Fatima and her friends again, a small group of students who existed on the periphery of Lincoln High's social hierarchy, too different to be popular, too proud to try. There was Marcus Chen, who Ines immediately dismissed as too common a name to focus on. A quiet boy who wore band t-shirts and was always reading. Gabriella, a junior with tattoos that peeked out from under her sleeves despite school policy. And Devon, who was non-binary and had mastered the art of existing defiantly in a school that preferred everyone fit into neat boxes. "They're getting worse," Fatima observed, watching as Trent and his group performed for an audience of admirers at their central table. "He's showing off. That's never good." "Why does no one stop him?" Ines asked, frustrated. "The teachers see." "The administrators must see." Devon laughed bitterly. "Trent's dad donates like $50,000 a year to the school. The new weight room? That's Keller money. The renovated auditorium? Keller money. You think they're going to risk that by disciplining his son for bullying? That is corrupt." "Welcome to America," Marcus said without looking up from his book. That afternoon in PE, Coach Braddock announced they would be doing combat sports, specifically basic self-defense techniques. Ines's pulse jumped. This was dangerous territory. The coach demonstrated a few simple escapes, basic blocks, the kind of rudimentary techniques taught to feel empowering but were mostly useless in real situations. Then he announced they would pair up and practice. Ines deliberately partnered with a girl named Ashley, who seemed more interested in checking her phone than participating. They went through the motions half-heartedly, Ashley complaining about having to do actual work in PE. Across the gymnasium, Trent was making a show of every technique, his greater size allowing him to overpower his partners easily. He kept glancing over at Ines, and she knew with sinking certainty what was coming. "All right, let's switch partners." Coach Braddock called out. I want everyone to practice with different body types and sizes. Builds muscle memory. The class reorganized itself in the controlled chaos typical of teenagers being told what to do. Ines tried to position herself near Fatima, who was also in this PE section, but Trent moved faster. Coach B, can I partner with the Spanish girl? I want to make sure she learns proper American self-defense. Several students laughed. Coach Braddock looked uncomfortable but nodded. Sure, Keller. Solana, you're with Trent. Everyone else find a partner. Ines walked to the mat where Trent waited, her expression carefully neutral. Up close, the size difference was substantial. He outweighed her by at least 60 pounds, most of it muscle. In a real confrontation, size mattered, but skill mattered more. Mateo had been smaller than many of his opponents. He had won anyway, right up until the night he did not. Okay, Trent said, loud enough for nearby students to hear. Let's see what they taught you in Spain. Probably nothing useful, right? The first technique was a wrist grab escape. Trent grabbed her wrist with unnecessary force, his fingers digging in, trying to hurt her. Ines performed the escape exactly as Coach Braddock had demonstrated, poorly, inefficiently, struggling more than she needed to. She made herself look weak. It took more control than showing her real skill would have required. Wow, that was sad, Trent commented. Let's try again. Maybe you'll get it this time. They repeated the technique. Each time Ines deliberately fumbled, and each time Trent's grip became more painful, his comments more cutting. Students were watching now, enjoying the show. No one intervened. I think maybe Spanish girls are just naturally weaker, Trent announced to his audience. Must be all that siesta time, not enough real exercise. Ines felt heat spreading up her neck, the warning sign of anger she had learned to recognize, Mateo's voice in her head. Anger makes you sloppy. Control your emotions, or they control you. She breathed carefully, counting in Spanish, uno, dos, tres, until the urge to demonstrate exactly how much damage she could do to Trent Keller's knee joint passed. Again, she said quietly. What was that? Can't hear you through that accent. Again, she repeated louder. This time, when Trent grabbed her wrist, he twisted it, forcing her hand back toward her forearm at an angle that would cause joint damage if she let him continue. Instinct took over. Her body moved before her brain could stop it. She stepped in, rotated her arm through the weak point in his grip, controlled his wrist, and had him completely off balance before she realized what she was doing. For half a second she held him there, his weight forward, his base compromised, completely vulnerable to a dozen different throws or strikes. Then she let go, stepped back, and made it look like an accident. I am sorry, she said quickly. I did not mean... What the fuck was that? Trent's face was red, embarrassment and anger mixing. Several students had seen. Marcus Chen, at a nearby mat, was watching with sudden interest. I'm sorry, Ines repeated. It was reflex. I did not mean anything. Coach Braddock's whistle shrieked. All right, that's enough partner work. Everyone grab some water, then we're running sprints. Ines escaped to the water fountain, her hands trembling. That had been close, too close. She had almost revealed herself because Trent Keller could not handle his ego being bruised. She pressed the fountain's button and let cold water run into her mouth, trying to wash away the taste of fear and adrenaline. That was interesting. She looked up. Marcus Chen stood next to her, waiting his turn for the fountain. Up close, she noticed he had small scars on his knuckles, the kind that came from hitting things. It was nothing, she said. Didn't look like nothing. Looked like you know what you're doing. Ines said nothing, which was answer enough. Marcus nodded slowly. Advice? Be more careful. Trent's not smart, but his friends are watching. If they figure out you've got training, they'll make sure you never get a chance to use it. They'll come at you when you're alone, or when you can't fight back without getting expelled. I do not have training. Marcus smiled slightly. Sure. And I don't have a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo. We all have our secrets. He stepped up to the fountain, drank, then added quietly, but some secrets can keep you safe. Don't blow your cover for pride. Not worth it. He walked away before she could respond, leaving Ines to wonder if she had found an unlikely ally, or if everyone at Lincoln High School had hidden depths she had not yet discovered. The incident in PE marked a turning point. Trent's embarrassment, even though Ines had released him and apologized, seemed to fuel his need to dominate her more completely. The harassment intensified. Tuesday, someone dumped an entire bottle of water on her seat in chemistry, soaking her pants so it looked like she had wet herself. She spent the rest of the day with her jacket tied around her waist, ignoring the snickers. Wednesday, her backpack went missing from her locker, only to turn up in the girls' bathroom toilet, her textbooks ruined, her notebook pages running with ink. Thursday brought the cafeteria incident that would become legendary. Ines was eating lunch with Fatima and the others, trying to focus on their conversation about an upcoming art show, when she felt the presence approach from behind. She should have been more alert, but she had let herself relax in the false security of friendly company. The first indication something was wrong was Gabriella's expression, shock morphing into anger. Then cold, sticky liquid poured over Ines's head, soaking her hair, running down her face and neck, dripping onto her shirt. The smell was overwhelming. Soda mixed with ketchup, the cafeteria's special combination apparently designed for maximum humiliation. The lunchroom went silent. Then laughter erupted, cascading through the space like a wave. Ines sat perfectly still, sauce dripping from her bangs onto her tray, and counted to 10 in Spanish. Uno, dos, tres. Behind her, Trent Keller's voice rang out, delighted. Whoops, so sorry. Must be that famous Spanish siesta reflexes. You didn't even see it coming. His friends surrounded him, several with phones out, recording. This would be on Instagram within minutes. Viral by the end of lunch. The foreign exchange student humiliated, evidence preserved forever in digital amber. Fatima grabbed napkins, pressing them into Ines's hands. Come on, she said urgently. Let's get you to the bathroom. No! Ines's voice was steady, though her hands under the table were white-knuckled fists. I will clean up here. She stood slowly, deliberately, turning to face Trent. Sauce dripped from her hair onto the cafeteria floor. Every eye in the room watched them. This was the moment, she realized, when she would either cement her status as victim or do something to change the dynamic. But what could she do? If she reacted, she played into his hands. If she hit him, and God, she wanted to hit him, wanted to demonstrate exactly how quickly she could drop him, she would be expelled. Foreign exchange students did not get second chances, so instead, Ines looked Trent Keller directly in the eyes and said, very clearly despite her accent, "You are pathetic." Then she walked toward the bathroom, sauce dripping with every step, her back straight, her pace measured. Behind her the silence stretched for 3 beats before confused murmuring broke out. She had not given him what he wanted. Tears, anger, fear, just those 3 words spoken with absolute contempt, and then dismissal. In the bathroom, Fatima and Gabriella helped her clean up as best they could. Her shirt was ruined, her hair sticky despite multiple rinses. Fatima ran to her locker and brought back a borrowed hoodie. Gabriella offered surprisingly kind words about how Trent was compensating for his small dick. Devon texted 27 angry emojis. Marcus somehow sent a message through Fatima. That was brave. Also stupid. Be careful. The assistant principal, Mrs. Carmichael, called Ines to her office after lunch. The office was small, windowless, decorated with motivational posters that rang hollow. Mrs. Carmichael was a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and the air of someone who had given up fighting the system she was supposed to uphold. I heard about the incident in the cafeteria, she began. Yes. Ines sat very still, her borrowed hoodie too large, her hair still damp and sticky. Do you know who was responsible? Of course she knew. Everyone knew. The videos were already spreading through the school's social media ecosystem, but Ines understood how this worked. Trent Keller was untouchable, and she was replaceable. It was an accident, she said carefully. Someone was not paying attention. Mrs. Carmichael sighed. Ines, may I call you Ines? I want you to know that Lincoln High has a zero-tolerance policy for bullying. If someone is harassing you, I need you to tell me so we can take appropriate action. It was a lie, but a well-intentioned one. Ines recognized the script. The administrator needed plausible deniability, needed to be able to say they had offered help, that the victim had declined to cooperate. If she named Trent, there would be an investigation that went nowhere, and she would be marked as a snitch, making everything worse. Thank you, Ines said, but truly it was just an accident. I am fine. Are you sure? Because these first few weeks as an exchange student can be challenging, and I am sure. May I go? I need to wash my hair again before next class. Mrs. Carmichael let her go with obvious relief. Probably to document in her records that she had followed protocol, that she had offered assistance, that the student had declined. Ines returned to the bathroom, washed her hair one more time in the sink, and went to her afternoon classes wearing someone else's hoodie and the weight of humiliation that no amount of water could wash away. That night, alone in her room, Ines did not practice her techniques. Instead, she sat on her bed and called her mother in Madrid. It was late there, past midnight, but her mother answered on the second ring, always alert for calls from her only living child. Cariño, is everything okay? Sí, Mama. I just wanted to hear your voice. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. Her mother's work at the embassy, her father's upcoming trip to Brussels, her grandmother's new obsession with teaching online English classes. Normal things, safe things. Her mother did not ask if she was being bullied, and Ines did not volunteer the information. Some burdens you carried alone. After they hung up, Ines pulled out her laptop and opened the folder of photos she kept backed up in the cloud. Most were family pictures, vacation snapshots, the visual record of a diplomatic childhood. But buried in a subfolder marked Barcelona 2021 was a video. She hesitated, cursor hovering, then double-clicked. The video was shot in a gym she recognized, Dragon Fight Club in the Gothic Quarter, where Mateo had taken her 3 times a week for 2 years. The footage showed a sparring session. Mateo was in the ring with a man twice his size, and he was winning. Not through aggression, but through perfect technique, moving like water around his opponent's power, striking with precision, demonstrating control. 19 years old and already being scouted by regional MMA promotions. 4 months after this video was recorded, he would be dead. Knife wound to the femoral artery, bleeding out on a sidewalk in Ibiza while his friends screamed for help. The other fighter, if he could be called that, had not meant to kill him. It was just supposed to be a fist fight over a girl Mateo barely knew. But someone had pulled a knife, and Mateo had not backed down, and in the space of seconds, everything had ended. Ines watched her brother move through the video, his footwork perfect, his combinations fluid, and felt the familiar ache of grief mixed with something newer, anger at the waste of it all, at the stupid masculine pride that had killed him, at a world where being able to fight somehow meant you should. Mateo could have walked away. He had been good enough to walk away from any street confrontation without losing face. But he had not, and now his little sister was in Colorado trying to honor his memory by refusing to become him. She closed the laptop, turned off the light, and lay in darkness, listening to Tom Hendricks's footsteps in the hallway, the suburban sounds of a house settling into night. Tomorrow would be Friday. 1 week since the cafeteria incident. She wondered what fresh humiliation waited. Friday brought unexpected respite. Trent Keller was absent. the result of an away football game that required the team to leave during 7th period. His absence created a vacuum that made the school's atmosphere noticeably lighter. Students walked the halls without the undercurrent of tension that came from being under constant observation. Ines ate lunch in relative peace, actually enjoying conversation with Fatima about their shared English assignment. But the peace was temporary. Over the weekend, while Ines was helping Sharon Hendricks plant bulbs in the front garden, a normal domestic activity that felt surreal given her week, her phone exploded with notifications. Someone had created an Instagram account called Tourists of Lincoln, and its first post was a compilation video of Ines's worst moments from the past 2 weeks. Her voice mispronouncing words, her face when sauce was dumped on her head, her walking away from confrontations, all set to stereotypical Spanish guitar music, captioned with fake subtitles mocking her accent. The video had been viewed 3,000 times. Students she had never met were tagged in comments, sharing it across networks that extended beyond Lincoln High. She was becoming a meme, her humiliation entertainment for people who did not even know her name. Sharon noticed Ines had gone still, staring at her phone, and asked if everything was okay. Ines lied, just a message from a friend, and helped finish planting the bulbs with hands that only slightly trembled. That night, she practiced her combinations with controlled fury, each strike precise, imagining Trent Keller's face as her target, but never allowing herself to believe she would actually hit it. Monday of the 3rd week, Ines walked into Lincoln High School with the viral video still racking up views and a new determination to become completely invisible. She would speak only when required. She would make no eye contact. She would be a ghost who attended classes and then vanished. It was not dignity, but it was survival. This plan lasted until lunch, when it was shattered by an unexpected variable, kindness from a stranger. His name was Beckett Walsh, and he was not someone Ines had noticed before, though in retrospect she should have. He was tall, but not aggressively so, with dark blonde hair that fell across his forehead and grey-green eyes that seemed to actually see what they looked at, rather than simply cataloguing social status. He wore clothes that suggested he did not particularly care about fashion, but somehow still looked put together, and he moved through the cafeteria with the ease of someone comfortable in his own skin. He sat with a mixed group, not the popular kids, but not the outcasts either, and seemed universally liked without being the center of attention. Ines was heading toward her usual table with Fatima when Beckett intercepted her path. "Hey, you're Ines, right? From Spain?" She tensed immediately, waiting for the punchline. "Yes. I'm Beckett. I was watching you in world history. We're in the same class. I sit a few rows back. You corrected Mr. Henderson about the Spanish Civil War timeline last week, and I thought that was really cool. Most people wouldn't have the guts to correct a teacher, especially not in front of everyone." Ines stared at him, trying to identify the trap. There had to be a trap, but Beckett's expression was genuine, open, curious, without being predatory. "Thank you," she said carefully. "I am just familiar with the subject." "Well, yeah, you're from there. That's why I wanted to ask. I'm doing my semester research paper on the international brigades, the foreign fighters who went to Spain during the Civil War, and I'm kind of struggling with sources. Most of what I've found is pretty shallow. Would you maybe want to help? Like if you know any good books or documentaries or whatever?" "You are asking me to help with homework. I'm asking if you'd want to collaborate. You'd be helping me understand the context better, and I could—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Be someone who's clearly happy to be talking to you in a very public space." The subtext was clear. Beckett had seen what was happening, understood the social dynamics, and was offering alliance. Ines felt something shift in her chest, not quite hope, but maybe the precursor to hope. "Why would you do this?" she asked. Because that video that's going around is bullshit. Because Trent Keller is an asshole who's gotten away with too much for too long. And because you look like you could use a friend. He said it matter-of-factly, without performative kindness, just stating observable truth. Before Inez could respond, Trent's voice cut across the cafeteria. "Yo, Walsh! What are you doing talking to the tourist?" Beckett turned, unhurried, and raised a hand in acknowledgement. "Having a conversation, Keller. You should try it sometime. It's this thing where you exchange ideas instead of just hearing yourself talk." The cafeteria rippled with laughter, but this time the laughter was directed at Trent. Several students openly smiled. Beckett Walsh might not be on the football team, but he had social capital of a different kind. Respect earned through genuinely being decent. When he publicly aligned himself with Inez, it shifted something in the room's dynamic. Trent's face darkened, but he was smart enough not to push it, not here. He made a dismissive gesture and turned back to his table. Beckett looked at Inez again. "So? Want to talk about the Spanish Civil War sometime, maybe after school at the library?" "Yes," Inez heard herself say. "I would like that." "Cool. Thursday work? I have football practice." Seeing her expression, he clarified quickly. "Soccer. I play midfielder for the rec league. I'm done by 5. You play football." She could not keep the surprise from her voice. "Yeah, what you guys call football, what we call soccer. My dad worked in London for a few years when I was a kid. I learned to play there. Still can't break the habit of calling it by the right name." He grinned, and Inez found herself almost smiling back. "Thursday is good. 5:30 at the library." "Perfect. See you in world history, Inez." He said her name correctly, the stress on the right syllable, the S properly soft. It was such a small thing, but after 2 weeks of deliberate mispronunciation, it felt like a gift. Inez watched him walk back to his table, watched him get absorbed back into conversation with his friends. A girl with purple hair, 2 boys arguing about something comic book related, all of them completely normal. She felt something unfamiliar and dangerous beginning to bloom in her chest. Hope. The rest of Monday passed without major incident, though Inez noticed increased attention. Students watching her interaction with Beckett, recalculating her social position. By Tuesday, 3 more people had said hello to her in the hallways. By Wednesday, a girl from her chemistry class asked if she could borrow notes. Small things, but after 2 weeks of isolation, they felt monumental. Trent Keller was not pleased. His harassment had been succeeding through isolation, making Inez a pariah everyone avoided. Now someone with social currency had breached that isolation, and others were following. He needed to reassert dominance. Inez sensed it coming like animals sense weather changes, every instinct screaming danger. Thursday after school she met Beckett at the school library as planned. It was a large, bright space with floor-to-ceiling windows and study tables scattered throughout. Beckett had already claimed a table, books spread out, laptop open. He looked up when she approached, and his smile was genuine. "Hey, thanks for doing this. I brought what I've got so far, but honestly it's pretty surface level." Ooh. They worked for 2 hours. Inez helping him understand the complexity of Spanish politics in the 1930s, the foreign intervention, the idealism and tragedy of the international brigades. Beckett listened intently, asked intelligent questions, took notes in handwriting that was surprisingly neat for a teenage boy. The conversation flowed easily, expanding beyond the assignment to other topics, what it was like growing up in a diplomatic family, why Beckett's parents had moved back to Denver from London, shared loves of reading and travel. "Your English is really good," Beckett said at one point. "Like, obviously you have an accent, but your vocabulary and grammar are basically perfect." "I have been learning since I was 5. My father's work required English, so it was necessary for the family." "The accent's nice, by the way. I don't know why people give you shit about it." It's distinctive. Inez felt her face heat. Thank you. Though I think distinctive is perhaps diplomatic language for funny sounding. No, I mean it. It's like... He searched for words. It makes you pay attention to what you're saying. Forces you to really listen, instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. They were interrupted by the librarian announcing closing time. As they packed up, Beckett asked, "Want to do this again? I mean, not just for homework. We could just, hang out, maybe grab coffee or something." Before Inez could answer, the library doors opened and Trent Keller walked in with Morrison and number 16, whose name she had learned was Derek Chen, no relation to Marcus. They were in football practice clothes, sweaty and aggressive, taking up more space than necessary. "Well, well," Trent said, his voice echoing in the now empty library. "If it isn't Walsh and his new little foreign friend." Cute study date. "Just working on a project, Keller," Beckett said evenly. "What do you want?" "Want? Nothing. Just curious why you're wasting time with the tourist when there are actual Americans you could be tutoring." He looked at Inez. "Or is she tutoring you? Teaching you Spanish? Maybe how to order tacos properly?" Inez saw Beckett's jaw tighten, recognized the signs of someone about to say something regrettable. She touched his arm lightly, the first time she had voluntarily touched another student since arriving at Lincoln High, and said quietly, "Let's go." But Trent was not finished. He stepped into their path, physically blocking the exit. This was escalation, moving from verbal harassment to physical intimidation. Morrison and Derek spread out, forming a wall. "I'm talking to you, Spanish. It's rude to walk away when someone's talking to you. Didn't they teach you manners in your country?" The librarian, Mrs. Chen, an older woman who had been kindly ignoring their presence past closing time, looked up from her desk. "Boys, the library is closed. Everyone needs to leave now." "We're leaving, Mrs. Chen," Trent said without taking his eyes off Inez. "Just saying goodbye to our foreign friend." "Now, Mr. Keller." Trent took a step back, but not aside, forcing Inez and Beckett to squeeze past him. As Inez did, he leaned in close and whispered, loud enough for her to hear, but quiet enough that Mrs. Chen could not. "You think Walsh actually likes you? He's just trying to get laid. American guys love foreign girls. You're easy." The words were designed to wound, to make her doubt the first genuine connection she had made, and they succeeded. Inez felt her face burn as she walked past, hating herself for the doubt that immediately sprouted, hating Trent for planting it, hating the whole situation. Outside the library, Beckett immediately said, "Whatever he just told you, it's bullshit. I asked you to help with my paper because I actually need help, and I asked to hang out because I actually enjoy talking to you. That's it. No ulterior motive. You do not need to—" "Yes, I do. Because Trent's whole strategy is to isolate you by making you doubt anyone who's nice to you. I've seen him do it before. Don't let him win." Inez looked at Beckett's face, trying to read sincerity in his expression. She had become good at reading people, a survival skill learned from constantly moving between cultures, and what she saw was genuine frustration and concern. "Okay," she said quietly. "I believe you. Good. And yes, I do want to hang out outside of homework. There's a coffee shop near school, the Grindhouse. They have amazing churros, which I know is stereotypical to bring up, but I swear I'm not trying to make a Spanish connection. I just really like churros, and thought you might too." Despite everything, Inez laughed. It was the first time she had laughed at Lincoln High, and it felt strange, like a muscle she'd forgotten how to use. "I like churros." Saturday afternoon. Perfect. They exchanged numbers, and Beckett waited with her at the bus stop, even though his car was in the school parking lot, chatting about nothing important until the bus arrived. As she rode home, watching Denver slide past the windows, Ines allowed herself to feel something she had been suppressing for 2 weeks, the possibility that this year might not be entirely terrible. Friday, the consequences of Thursday's library confrontation became apparent. Beckett arrived at school to find his car, an old Honda Civic he had mentioned was his pride and joy, purchased with his own saved money, keyed across both sides, deep gouges spelling out "traitor" in ugly capital letters. The school's security cameras conveniently did not cover that section of the parking lot. Everyone knew who was responsible. No one could prove it. Ines heard about it second period and felt guilt twist her stomach. This was her fault. Beckett had shown her kindness, and now he was being punished for it. The old pattern reasserting itself. Anyone who allies with the victim becomes a victim themselves. She found him at lunch, intending to apologize, to release him from any obligation to continue their friendship. "I am sorry," she said, sitting across from him at his usual table. His friends watched curiously, but did not interrupt. "This is because of me. I should not have—" "Stop," Beckett interrupted. "This is because Trent's an asshole, not because you exist. If I let him dictate who I'm friends with, he wins. That's not happening. But your car is a car. It can be repaired. And honestly," Beckett's expression hardened, "I'm kind of done with letting him run this school. My parents are furious. They're filing a police report, even though we all know it won't go anywhere. But at least it's on record." One of Beckett's friends, the girl with purple hair whose name was Riley, leaned forward. "We've got your back, Ines. Trent's been pulling this shit for years. It's time someone stood up to him." "But how?" Ines asked. "He is, how do you say, untouchable? His father has power, the school protects him, and anyone who challenges him becomes a target." "Yeah, that's the problem," one of the boys, Jeremy, said. "The system's rigged. Teachers know what he does, they just don't care enough to risk their jobs." "Or they're scared of his dad," Riley added. "My mom teaches here. She's told me stories about how Keller Sr. destroyed a teacher's career for giving Trent a C, got her transferred to a school in the worst district in the state." Ines listened, understanding fully for the first time the depth of Trent Keller's power at Lincoln High. This was not just high school bullying. This was institutional failure, a system that had decided one student's comfort was more important than dozens of other students' safety. She thought about Matteo, about how he had always hated bullies, how he had taught her to fight specifically so she could defend herself and others who could not defend themselves. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "the system does not change until someone forces it to change." Beckett looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Just an observation." But something had shifted in her thinking. She had been trying to honor Matteo's memory by never fighting. But what if she had it backwards? What if the real dishonor was remaining passive while someone like Trent Keller hurt people with impunity? Matteo had died fighting for nothing, for ego, for pride, for reasons that did not matter, but fighting to protect others, fighting when all other options had failed, fighting not from anger, but from necessity. Was that the same thing? She did not have an answer yet, but the question had taken root. Saturday, Ines met Beckett at the Grindhouse, a coffee shop 3 blocks from the school that smelled of espresso and cinnamon and was filled with Lincoln High students doing homework or just hanging out. She felt exposed walking in, aware of the looks and whispers, but Beckett's presence beside her made it manageable. They ordered coffee for him, hot chocolate for her, and yes, churros that were not quite as good as Madrid churros, but were still comforting, and found a corner table. They talked for 3 hours, about books and movies, about what it was like being a diplomatic kid versus growing up in Colorado, about soccer and martial arts. Beckett mentioned that his dad had signed him up for karate as a kid, but he had quit after getting his yellow belt, about dreams for the future. Beckett wanted to study international relations, maybe work for the UN. Inez had not thought much about the future. She had been too focused on surviving the present. "What about you?" Beckett asked. "What do you want to do after school?" Inez hesitated. The real answer was complicated. She had wanted to study sports medicine, maybe work with fighters, honor Mateo's memory by helping athletes stay safe. But after his death, she had withdrawn from everything connected to combat sports. "I do not know any more," she admitted. "I thought I knew, but things changed." Things or life changed you? It was an perceptive question. Both. Beckett did not push for details, respecting her privacy. Instead, he told her about his own uncertainty, about pressure from his parents to follow a practical path when what he really wanted was to write. Maybe be a journalist covering international conflicts. They discovered shared love of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, argued good-naturedly about whether 100 Years of Solitude or Love in the Time of Cholera was better, and laughed about the pretentious way their English teacher pronounced magical realism. It was the most normal afternoon Inez had experienced since arriving in Colorado. For 3 hours, she was not the foreign exchange student, not the victim, not the girl with secrets. She was just Inez, talking with someone who seemed to actually like her. As they prepared to leave, Beckett asked, "Want to do this again? Maybe make it a weekly thing." "Yes," Inez said without hesitation. "I would like that very much." They walked out together into autumn sunshine, Denver's perfect October weather when the air was crisp and the sky was impossibly blue. Beckett walked her to the bus stop, and as they waited, his phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned, then showed her the screen. It was an Instagram post from Trent's account, a photo of Beckett's car, keyed and damaged, with the caption, "This is what happens when you forget where your loyalty belongs. Choose your friends carefully." It had 300 likes already. "He is threatening you publicly," Inez said, anger heating her voice. "Yeah, well, good luck with that. My parents are already talking to lawyers. Keller Sr. might have the school scared, but he can't control the whole legal system." Beckett put his phone away. "Don't worry about it, I'm good." But Inez did worry. She worried all weekend, checking her phone compulsively, watching as Trent's harassment of Beckett escalated through social media. By Monday, someone had spray-painted "traitor" on Beckett's driveway. By Tuesday, he had been shoved into lockers twice. By Wednesday, during PE, someone, everyone knew who, no one could prove it, had stolen his clothes from the locker room, forcing him to go to the office wrapped in a towel to call his parents for new clothes. And through it all, Beckett refused to apologize, refused to distance himself from Inez, refused to give Trent what he wanted, which meant the punishment would continue, which meant Inez was hurting someone who had shown her only kindness. Wednesday night, lying in bed unable to sleep, Inez made a decision. She could not keep doing this. She could not keep letting her presence destroy anyone who tried to help her. She would finish the school year somehow. Maybe request a transfer to another school, maybe convince her parents to end the exchange early, anything. But she could not keep being the reason good people suffered. Thursday morning, she walked into Lincoln High with a resignation letter drafted on her phone, ready to take it to Mrs. Carmichael and request transfer paperwork. She would claim homesickness, cultural adjustment issues, anything but the truth. The Hendricks family would be disappointed but understanding. Her parents would be frustrated but would accept it. And Beckett would move on, find new friends who did not come with a target on their back. She made it to second period before the plan exploded. It started in the hallway between chemistry and world history. Inez was walking to class, head down, trying to be invisible, when she heard Beckett's voice raised in anger. She looked up to see him facing Trent and Morrison, his usual calm shattered. "Say that again," Beckett demanded. "I said, Trent repeated slowly, like talking to a child, "that your little Spanish whore is probably used to sleeping her way through Europe. Probably why her family sent her here. She worked through all the guys in Madrid." Everything went silent. The hallway, normally chaos between periods, froze. Students stopped, phones came out, everyone sensing blood in the water. Ines felt something break inside her chest, the final straining thread of restraint snapping. She had endured mockery of her accent, humiliation in the cafeteria, social isolation. But this attack on her character, designed to destroy her reputation and hurt Beckett simultaneously, this was too far. She pushed through the crowd, moving before she thought until she stood between Beckett and Trent. Up close, Trent was even bigger than she remembered, his confidence radiating in waves, secure in his untouchability. "Apologize," she said quietly. Trent laughed. "Excuse me? Did the Spanish tourist just give me an order? I said apologize, to Beckett, to me, to everyone you have hurt." "Or what?" Trent leaned down, invading her space, using his size to intimidate. "What are you going to do, tourist? Cry, run away? That's all you know how to do, right?" Ines looked up at him, and something in her expression must have changed because Trent's smirk faltered slightly. "I am going to give you one chance," she said, her accent thicker with emotion, but her words clear. "Walk away now. Leave us alone, or you will regret it." Holy shit, she's threatening me. Trent looked at his gathered audience, playing for laughs. The little Spanish girl who can barely speak English is threatening me. This is fucking hilarious. "Ines, don't," Beckett said urgently behind her, sensing something dangerous building. "He's not worth it." But he was wrong. Trent was not worth it, but the principle was. The idea that cruelty should go unchallenged. The belief that power without accountability would continue indefinitely. The memory of her brother, who had taught her to stand up for herself and others, even as his own inability to walk away, had killed him. All of it converged in this moment, in this hallway, with phones recording and students watching. "Last chance," Ines said. Trent smiled, reached out and flicked her forehead dismissively. "Go back to Spain, tourist. You don't belong here." And just like that, the decision was made. Not in anger, though anger was there. Not in revenge, though revenge would be sweet. But in the cold, clear understanding that sometimes peaceful resistance was not enough. Sometimes you had to show people that consequences existed. "Okay," Ines said quietly. "I warned you." The first sign that something had changed was her posture. In half a second her stance shifted, weight balanced, shoulders relaxed, hands loose at her sides. Anyone with martial arts training would have recognized it immediately as a fighting position. Trent, who had never faced real opposition in his life, did not even notice. "What's wrong, Spanish? Finally gonna—" She moved. Not wild, not angry, but with the precision of someone who had trained thousands of hours. When Trent reached out to shove her, expecting her to stumble back, to give him the reaction he wanted, she was simply not there. She had stepped offline, rotated her hips, and suddenly she was beside him, her hand controlling his extended wrist. The basic joint manipulation she had practiced 10,000 times with Mateo. She did not strike him, she did not hurt him. She just controlled his arm, applying pressure to the wrist joint that forced him up onto his toes, off balance, his size meaning nothing. "What the fuck?" Trent started to say. "We can stop now," Ines said calmly, "or you can try again." "Your choice." She released him, stepped back, returned to her neutral stance. The hallway was dead silent. 50 students, dozens of phones, all focused on this impossible moment, the foreign girl who had been passive and helpless for a month, suddenly demonstrating that she had been neither. Trent's face cycled through confusion, embarrassment, rage. He had been made to look foolish in front of his audience. That could not stand. "You bitch," he said, and lunged at her. This time, Ines did not just defend. She demonstrated. Trent came in aggressively, relying on size and strength, throwing a wild punch that would have connected with anyone who did not know what they were doing. Ines slipped it, minimal movement just enough, and countered with a controlled palm strike to his chest that stopped his momentum completely. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to show she could have done damage if she wanted. He stumbled back, more from shock than force. Morrison moved to help his friend, approaching from Ines's left side. She saw him in her peripheral vision, tracked his movement, and when he grabbed at her, she applied a basic wrist lock that sent him to his knees, gasping. She held him there for 2 seconds, long enough to make the point, then released him and stepped away. "I do not want to fight you," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I have never wanted to fight, but I will defend myself, and I will not accept this treatment anymore." Trent was back on his feet, his face red with humiliation and rage. "You fucking—" He came at her again, but this time it was Derek Chen, number 16, who stopped him, grabbing Trent's arm. "Dude, stop. She knows what she's doing. You're gonna get hurt." "Get off me!" Trent shoved Derek aside. "I'm not getting beaten by some tourist bitch." "Then do not attack me," Ines said simply. The crowd had grown, more students pouring out of classrooms, teachers starting to notice the commotion. Mr. Henderson, the world history teacher, pushed through. "What's going on here? Break it up, now!" But Trent was beyond reason. He rushed Ines one more time, and this time she did not just neutralize him, she demonstrated exactly how outclassed he was. She stepped into his charge, used his momentum against him, and executed a perfect hip throw that would have been textbook in any dojo. Trent flew through the air, not dangerously. She controlled his fall, and landed on his back on the linoleum floor with a sound that echoed through the hallway. Ines immediately stepped back, hands up, showing she was done. Trent lay on the floor, the wind knocked out of him, staring at the ceiling in shock. The hallway exploded, shouting, laughing, phones recording everything. Mr. Henderson was yelling for security. Other teachers were trying to control the crowd, and Ines stood in the center of it all, breathing carefully, knowing she had just changed everything. "He started it," at least 5 students said simultaneously, all volunteering as witnesses. "She defended herself," someone else added. "Keller attacked her first," Fatima's voice rang out. "We all saw it." Security arrived, 2 officers who knew Trent well from previous incidents. They helped him to his feet. He was shaking, whether from adrenaline or fear or rage, Ines could not tell. He looked at her with pure hatred. "You're dead," he hissed as security led him away. "You hear me? Fucking dead." "Mr. Keller, that's enough," Mr. Henderson snapped. Then to Ines, "Miss Solana, you need to come with me to the office." Now, the walk to the administrative wing felt surreal. Students parted for her, some with respect, some with fear, many with their phones still out, recording. Beckett caught up to her halfway there. "Are you okay?" he asked urgently. "I do not know yet." "That was... Where did you learn to do that?" "It is complicated." "Ines, I will explain later, if I can." Mrs. Carmichael's office, which had seemed so bland and forgettable 3 weeks ago, now felt like a courtroom. The assistant principal sat behind her desk, expression unreadable. Principal Reynolds had been called in, a severe man in his 60s who normally only dealt with serious disciplinary issues. And sitting in the corner, looking like he owned the place, was a man in an expensive suit who could only be Trent's father. "Miss Solana," Principal Reynolds began, his tone already judgmental, "do you understand how serious this is?" Assault of another student can result in immediate expulsion and criminal charges. Before Ines could respond, the door opened again, and Sharon Hendricks rushed in, still wearing her nurse's scrubs, clearly called away from work. "I'm her guardian while she's in the US, Sharon said breathlessly. "What happened?" "Is she hurt?" "Mrs. Hendricks, Your exchange student attacked another student in the hallway. There were multiple witnesses. I was defending myself, Ines said clearly. He attacked me first. There are many witnesses to this also. Keller Sr. She could see the family resemblance, the same arrogant set to the jaw, leaned forward. My son told me this foreign student has been provoking him for weeks, making up stories about bullying, trying to get attention. Today she finally became physical. I want her expelled and prosecuted. That is a lie, Ines said, her accent thickening with stress. Your son has been harassing me since my first day. He has vandalized my property, humiliated me publicly, spread lies about me online. I have said nothing because I believed the system would protect him. She looked directly at Principal Reynolds. I was correct. The system does protect him. But today he threatened my friend and made disgusting accusations about my character. He attacked me first. I only defended myself. There's video, Sharon Hendricks said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. What? I'm sure there's video. These days there's always video. Let's watch it before we make accusations. Principal Reynolds looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Hendricks, student privacy? My son's privacy has been violated by this attack, Keller Sr. interrupted. I want her arrested. Then we should see the evidence first, Sharon insisted. If Ines attacked him unprovoked, fine. But if he attacked her first, then this is clearly self-defense, and I'll be the one talking to lawyers. The temperature in the room dropped. Keller Sr. was used to his threats working, unused to anyone pushing back. He looked at Principal Reynolds with expectation. The principal looked at Mrs. Carmichael. A silent conversation happened, one that Ines could read clearly. They did not want to see the video. They wanted to handle this quietly, sweep it under the rug, get rid of the foreign exchange student who had caused trouble, but Sharon Hendricks had called their bluff. Fine, Principal Reynolds said tightly. Mrs. Carmichael, get one of the video students took. 5 minutes later, they were watching footage on Principal Reynolds's laptop. Multiple angles had been compiled, students airdropping files to each other, creating a comprehensive view of the incident. The video showed everything: Trent's initial verbal assault, Beckett's defense, Ines stepping between them trying to defuse, Trent's continued harassment. The moment he physically flicked her forehead and said, "Go back to Spain." Then Trent's first lunge, Ines's controlled defense, Morrison's intervention, Derek's failed attempt to stop Trent, and finally the hip throw. It was irrefutable. Trent had been the aggressor every step of the way. Ines had used minimal force, never struck first, and stopped as soon as he was down. The silence after the video ended was profound. Principal Reynolds closed the laptop slowly. Keller Sr.'s jaw was clenched tight enough to crack teeth. Mrs. Carmichael looked relieved. She would not have to railroad an innocent student today. Well, Sharon Hendricks said in the silence, her voice carrying the righteous anger of a nurse who had seen too much injustice. That looks pretty clearly like self-defense to me, along with documentation of weeks of harassment that this school apparently did nothing about. Mrs. Hendricks, Principal Reynolds began. No. Sharon stood up, all 5'2" of her radiating fury. I've been patient. I've trusted this school to take care of a child placed in my care. But that video shows months of harassment, and that boy, she pointed in the general direction of where Trent would be, has been terrorizing this girl with apparent institutional approval. So here's what's going to happen. Ines is not being expelled. She's not being suspended. She's not facing any consequences for defending herself against an attacker twice her size. And if I see any retaliation, any further harassment, any attempt to punish her for this, I will contact every news outlet in Denver and make sure everyone knows how Lincoln High protects bullies and punishes victims. It was magnificent. Ines felt tears prick her eyes, not from fear or stress, but from the overwhelming feeling of finally, having an adult stand up for her. Keller Sr. stood abruptly. "This isn't over," he said to Principal Reynolds, ignoring Sharon and Ines completely. "I'll be speaking to the school board." "You do that," Sharon said sweetly, "and I'll bring my video compilation." After Keller Sr. stormed out, Principal Reynolds deflated visibly. The fight went out of him without Keller's pressure. "Miss Solana," he said tiredly, "you're suspended for the rest of the day while we investigate. Pending our review, you'll likely return Monday. Trent will face appropriate consequences." "What consequences?" Ines asked. "That's not your concern." "It is my concern. He attacked me. He has attacked others. What will happen to him?" Principal Reynolds did not answer, which was answer enough. Maybe a slap on the wrist. Maybe nothing at all. The system grinding on, protecting its golden boy. Sharon took Ines home. In the car, the nurse was shaking with residual adrenaline and anger. "I am so sorry," she said. "I knew kids could be cruel, but I didn't realize. I should have asked more questions, should have checked in better." "It is not your fault. You have been kind to me. More than kind. You defended me today when no one else would." "Honey, that's just basic human decency, which apparently is in short supply at that school." Sharon glanced over at her. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" "That was impressive, scary, but impressive." And so Ines told her. About Matteo, about the years of training, about the promise she had made and why she had broken it today, about carrying the weight of her brother's death while trying not to become another version of his mistakes. Sharon listened without interrupting, occasionally reaching over to pat Ines's hand. "Your brother would be proud of you," Sharon said when Ines finished. "You didn't fight for pride or ego. You fought to protect yourself and your friend after trying every other option. That's not the same as what happened to him. You understand that, right?" "I am beginning to—" At home, Ines's phone exploded with messages, texts from Fatima, Riley, Jeremy, even Marcus Chen congratulating her, Instagram notifications showing the video going viral within Lincoln High's social network. TikTok already had compilations set to dramatic music. She was becoming famous for something other than humiliation. But mixed with the support were threats. Trent's friends rallying, promising revenge, anonymous accounts sending graphic messages about what they wanted to do to her. She showed these to Sharon, who immediately screenshot everything and sent it to her personal email for documentation. Beckett called that evening. "Are you okay?" "I think so. I am suspended for today, but probably back Monday." "Ah, God, Ines, that was incredible. I mean, it shouldn't have happened, but watching you defend yourself, I've never seen anything like it. You moved like I have been training my whole life." "Yeah. Why didn't you tell me?" "Would you have believed me?" The quiet foreign girl who lets herself be bullied. "No one would believe I could fight until I proved it." "Fair point, but now everyone knows, including Trent. He's going to come back harder. Then I will deal with it." "Ines, Beckett, I am tired of being afraid. I am tired of letting cruel people control my life because they have power I do not. Today I took my power back. Whatever happens next, at least I did that." There was a long pause. Then Beckett said, "You're kind of amazing, you know that." Ines felt her face heat. "I'm just tired of being a victim." "You were never a victim. You were just waiting for the right moment." They talked for another hour about nothing and everything, about the fallout at school, about what Monday would bring, about whether Ines would get in actual legal trouble. Sharon didn't think so. The video was too clear. And underneath the practical discussion, there was something else emerging, something neither of them directly acknowledged, but both felt. Connection, understanding, the foundation of something more than friendship, though neither was ready to name it yet. Friday, Ines did not go to school. Sharon called her in sick, though they both knew it was more about letting the situation cool down than actual illness. Ines spent the day practicing her combinations in her room, running through forms, trying to process everything. She felt different, lighter somehow, despite having crossed a line she had sworn never to cross. Maybe Sharon was right. Maybe defending herself when all other options had failed was not the same as Mateo's prideful street fighting. Maybe context mattered. Monday morning arrived, with Colorado's perfect autumn weather mocking the anxiety in Ines's stomach. She dressed carefully, comfortable clothes that allowed movement, nothing that could be grabbed easily in a confrontation. Sharon insisted on driving her to school. "If anything happens," Sharon said as they pulled into the parking lot, "anything at all that makes you feel unsafe, you call me immediately. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Understand?" "Yes, thank you." "And Inez? Hold your head up. You have nothing to be ashamed of." Walking into Lincoln High felt like entering enemy territory. Students stopped and stared. Some smiled, others looked afraid. A few, Trent's core group, glared with open hostility. But the quality of the attention had changed. She was no longer invisible, no longer dismissible. She was the foreign exchange student who had thrown the most popular boy in school to the ground and walked away without consequence. At her locker, Fatima was waiting with Riley and Marcus. "Welcome back," Fatima said, pulling her into a hug. "You're a legend." "I am suspended student who will probably face more trouble." "Yeah, but a legend," Riley insisted. "That video has like 50,000 views across all platforms. People are calling you the Spanish Ninja." Marcus caught her eye. "That was judo, right?" "The throw?" "Hip throw, yes. But I learned it from my brother, who trained in many styles. It was clean, perfect form. If you hadn't controlled his fall, Keller could have been seriously hurt." Marcus said it without judgment, just observation. "You held back." "I had to. I did not want to hurt him permanently. I just wanted him to stop." "Well, he stopped," Fatima said with satisfaction. "Word is he's been suspended for a week. And Derek Chen told Jeremy that Trent's completely freaked out. He's never been physically dominated before, doesn't know how to process it." First period, American literature with Mrs. Patterson, brought unexpected support. When Ines walked in, the class erupted in spontaneous applause. Mrs. Patterson did not stop them, just watched with a small smile. When the noise died down, she said, "Welcome back, Miss Solana. I'm glad you're safe. Now, let's discuss The Great Gatsby and the American dream's relationship to social class and power structures. I think we have some real-world examples we can draw from." The day progressed with similar surreal quality. Teachers who had previously ignored harassment now made eye contact, acknowledged her presence. Students who had avoided her now smiled in passing or offered brief words of support. In chemistry, her former lab partner apologized for being kind of a dick and asked if they could start over. In world history, Mr. Henderson asked her to present on Spanish cultural influences in the American Southwest, a clear message of inclusion. But the biggest change was at lunch. When Ines entered the cafeteria, the usual chaos quieted noticeably. She felt hundreds of eyes tracking her movement as she bought her food and headed toward Fatima's table. As she passed Trent's usual table, currently occupied by his friends in his absence, Morrison stood up. Ines tensed, ready, but Morrison just said, "Hey, I'm sorry. For everything. I just followed Trent because that's what I've always done, you know? But watching you defend yourself and then seeing the video of what we put you through," he looked genuinely uncomfortable. "You didn't deserve that. None of it. And I'm sorry." The cafeteria was dead silent, everyone waiting for Ines's response. She could humiliate him, make a scene, get revenge for weeks of harassment. Instead, she thought about Mateo, about honor, about who she wanted to be. "Thank you for apologizing," she said quietly. "It takes courage to admit you were wrong." "Yeah, well, anyway, I'm done with that shit," Trent's my friend, but he's been out of control for years. Someone needed to stop him. I just wish it hadn't taken you getting hurt first." Morrison sat back down, and conversation gradually resumed. When Ines reached her table, Beckett was waiting there. He had apparently migrated to their group permanently. He smiled when he saw her. "How's your first day back?" "Strange. People are being nice." "Yeah, funny how that works. Fear gets results, I guess. I do not want them to fear me. I just want them to leave me alone." "Then you might need to settle for respect," Riley said, "which is better than fear, but fear's a good starting point with people like Trent." They ate lunch together, conversation flowing easily, and for the first time since arriving at Lincoln High, Ines felt like she might actually have friends. Real friends, not people who tolerated her, but people who actively chose her company. It was a strange, warm feeling. PE that afternoon brought the confrontation Ines had been dreading. Trent was suspended, but Coach Braddock called her into his office before class. "Solana, sit down." She sat, trying to read his expression. Coach Braddock was hard to read. Former college linebacker turned PE teacher. He had probably seen every type of teenage drama imaginable. "I watched the video," he said bluntly. "Multiple times. That was quality technique. Where'd you learn to fight like that?" "My brother taught me. Before he died." Braddock's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry about your brother. And I'm sorry I didn't recognize what was happening with Keller. I should have seen it, should have stopped it before it got that far. You saw it. Everyone saw it. But no one stopped it. He flinched at the truth. You're right. That's on me and every other adult in this building. We failed you. But I want you to know, moving forward, if anyone gives you trouble, I want to hear about it immediately. You've proven you can defend yourself, but you shouldn't have to. That's our job." "Okay, thank you. And Solana, between you and me, that hip throw was beautiful, perfect control. Your brother taught you well." PE proceeded without incident. Students gave her space, not hostile, but cautious, recalculating her position in the school's social ecosystem. She ran laps, participated in drills, and noticed how differently people treated her now. Power dynamics had shifted, fundamentally. She was no longer prey. After school, Beckett walked her to the bus stop. "Want to study this weekend? Or just hang out? No specific agenda, just spend time together?" Ines looked at him, at his genuine smile, his grey-green eyes that saw her as a person rather than a category, the easy way he existed in his own skin. "Yes," she said. "I would like that. Saturday? I can drive us somewhere. There's this park in the foothills with amazing views. We could bring food, make a day of it." "That sounds perfect." As the bus arrived, Beckett said, "I'm really glad you're here, Ines. I know it's been hard, but I'm glad you came to Lincoln High." "I'm beginning to be glad also," she admitted. The bus ride home felt different, lighter. She looked out the window at Denver's sprawl and allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in months: optimism. Maybe this year would not be entirely terrible. Maybe good things could come from difficulty. Maybe surviving crisis revealed not just weakness, but strength. At the Hendricks house, Sharon was waiting with cookies fresh from the oven and questions about her day. Tom made terrible jokes about karate kids and crane kicks. They treated her like family, and for the first time, Ines let herself accept that role instead of maintaining emotional distance. These were good people. This was a good home. She was lucky. That night, she pulled up the video of Matteo sparring, watched him move with the fluidity and control that she had inherited. "I think I understand now," she said to his image on the screen. You taught me to fight, but you also taught me to know when fighting is necessary. Today was necessary. You would have understood that." She closed the laptop and slept better than she had in months. The rest of the week passed in relative calm. Trent remained suspended. His core group was subdued, uncertain without their leader. The broader student body seemed relieved, as if a dark cloud had lifted. Inez discovered she was not Trent's only victim. Students she barely knew approached her to share their own stories of his harassment, thanking her for standing up when they couldn't. Saturday's outing with Beckett exceeded expectations. He picked her up in his damaged Honda. He had left the scratches unrepaired as a reminder, and drove them to Red Rocks Park in the foothills west of Denver. They hiked easy trails, ate sandwiches overlooking dramatic rock formations, and talked for hours. The conversation wandered from serious to silly, comfortable silences interspersed with laughter. At one point, sitting on a boulder with the Front Range spread below them, Beckett asked, "Can I ask you something personal?" "Yes." "What's it like, carrying that secret, knowing you could defend yourself all along but choosing not to?" Inez considered carefully. "It is like being two people. The one everyone sees, who is quiet and avoids conflict, and the one I really am, who knows she could end a confrontation in seconds. My brother used to say that true strength is knowing your power but choosing peace. He was right, but he could not follow his own advice. I tried to follow it, but I learned that sometimes peace is not possible with people who only understand force." "Do you regret it? Breaking your promise to him?" "No. I think I was misunderstanding the promise. I promised not to become him, not to fight for pride or ego or meaningless reasons, but defending myself and others, that is different. That is what he actually taught me. I just could not see it until I had no other choice." "Your brother sounds like he was a good person." "He was. He just made one bad decision, and it cost him everything. I cannot bring him back, but I can try to learn from his mistake without dishonoring his memory." Beckett reached over and took her hand, tentative, giving her room to pull away if she wanted. She did not pull away. They sat there on the boulder, hands linked, watching clouds cast shadows across the landscape, and Inez felt something she had not felt since Mateo died, connection to another person that felt safe, solid, real. On the drive back, Beckett asked, "So what happens when Trent comes back next week?" "I do not know. He will be angry, humiliated. Boys like him do not accept defeat." "Are you worried?" "A little, but also not as much as before. I know now that I can stand up for myself. That knowledge changes things." "Well, whatever happens, you've got backup. Me, Fatima, Riley, Marcus, Jeremy, we've got your back." "Thank you. I have never had friends like you before." "Never?" "Moving countries every few years makes real friendships difficult. Easier to keep distance, not get attached." "That sounds lonely." "It was. Is. But maybe less now." They pulled up to the Hendricks house as sunset painted the suburban street in gold and amber. Before Inez got out, Beckett said, "I really like you, Inez. Just want you to know that. No ulterior motives, no weird agenda. I just genuinely like spending time with you." Inez felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I like you also, more than I expected to like anyone this year. So maybe we could make this a regular thing, not just homework help or friend hangouts, but like dating?" "Yes," Inez said, surprised by how easy the answer came. "I would like that very much." They kissed goodnight, brief, soft, perfect in its uncertainty, and Inez floated into the house, feeling like the universe might not be entirely hostile after all. Monday brought Trent's return to Lincoln High. Inez felt the tension the moment she entered the building. Students were watching, waiting to see how this would play out. Trent's reappearance was heavily managed by administration. He had been in meetings all morning with Mrs. Carmichael, his father, and apparently the school's lawyer. When he finally emerged at lunch, he looked different, smaller somehow, less sure of his position. He saw Ines across the cafeteria, and for a long moment they locked eyes. His expression cycled through rage, fear, and something that might have been resignation. Then he looked away first and sat with his greatly diminished group of followers. Morrison was notably absent from that table. He had joined a different group. Derek was there but looked uncomfortable. The hierarchy had fractured. Ines waited for retaliation that never came. Trent was quiet, subdued, going through school with his head down for the first time in his life. Word spread that his father had threatened consequences if there were any more incidents. Apparently, Keller Sr. had been informed that video evidence of his son's harassment, combined with property damage to Beckett's car, could result in actual criminal charges that even his money and influence might not deflect. The school board had apparently made it clear that one more incident and Trent would be expelled regardless of his father's donations. Tuesday, something unexpected happened. Trent approached Ines after World History, alone, while his friends were still inside the classroom. He looked uncomfortable, his practiced confidence completely gone. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, his voice missing its usual arrogance. "Okay." They moved to the side of the hallway, out of the main traffic flow. Students watched curiously, but kept distance. Trent ran a hand through his hair, clearly struggling. "I wanted to... Fuck, this is hard. I wanted to apologize." Ines waited, saying nothing. "I was a dick to you. More than a dick, I was cruel, and I don't have a good excuse. My dad's always pushing me to be the best, to dominate, to never show weakness. And taking it out on you made me feel powerful, which is fucked up, I know. But watching that video, seeing what I looked like..." He swallowed hard. "I was a bully. I made your life hell for no reason except that I could. And then you defended yourself and I realized you could have really hurt me. You held back. You showed mercy when I would have shown none. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've been in therapy all week. Mandatory, after the suspension. My dad wasn't happy, but the school insisted. And my therapist asked me to think about why I needed to make someone else feel small to feel big. And honestly, I don't have a good answer, except that it's easier to punch down than to deal with my own shit." Ines studied his face, looking for manipulation, for the angle. But what she saw was genuine discomfort with self-reflection, the first honest expression she had seen from him. "I do not forgive you," she said carefully. "Not yet." "What you did, it was not just one incident, it was weeks of systematic cruelty. You made me feel worthless in a place where I was already isolated and vulnerable." "I know, and I'm not asking for forgiveness, just letting you know I'm sorry, and I'm going to try to be better. That's all." He started to walk away, then stopped. "For what it's worth, that throw was badass. And you were right. I am pathetic, was pathetic, working on the past tense. After he left, Beckett appeared from wherever he had been watching. Did Trent Keller just genuinely apologize? I think so. It was awkward, but it seemed real. Wow, character development in real time. Never thought I'd see it. Over the following weeks, a new pattern established itself at Lincoln High. Trent kept his word. He left Ines alone, stopped harassing other students, and visibly worked on changing his behavior. It was not instant transformation. He still had arrogant moments, still sometimes fell into old patterns of entitlement, but he also apologized when called out, accepted consequences without his father's intervention, and slowly began rebuilding his reputation on something other than fear. Ines's reputation crystallized around the incident. She was the Spanish fighter, the exchange student who had revealed unexpected depths. Some students were intimidated, others were fascinated. Most just treated her with the basic respect they should have offered from day one. She made real friends beyond her core group, joined the World Language Club, where her multilingual background was an asset rather than a joke, started helping Marcus with Spanish homework in exchange for his help with American history, even convinced Fatima to start training basic self-defense together at a local gym. Her relationship with Beckett deepened naturally. They studied together, hung out on weekends, went to movies and concerts, and just drove around Denver, talking about everything and nothing. He introduced her to his family. His parents were lovely. His younger sister was obsessed with Spain and asked a million questions. She taught him basic Spanish phrases, laughed at his terrible accent, kissed him when he got frustrated with rolling R's. It was normal and sweet, and exactly what she needed after months of crisis. At the Hendricks house, the family dynamic shifted from polite distance to genuine affection. Sharon and Tom treated her like a daughter. They attended her school's cultural showcase where she gave a presentation on Spanish history. They bought her favorite Spanish foods from a specialty market 40 minutes away. When her birthday came in November, they threw a surprise party with her school friends, and Inez cried happy tears for the first time in years. The academic year progressed through autumn into winter. Denver's weather turned cold, snow dusting the foothills, the city taking on the crystalline quality of high-altitude winters. Inez settled into routines that felt sustainable: school, homework, training at the gym with Fatima, dates with Beckett, family dinners with the Hendricks. She called her parents weekly, no longer hiding how difficult the beginning had been, but able to report genuine happiness now. In December, the school's administration organized an anti-bullying assembly. They asked Inez if she would speak, share her experience, help other students understand the impact of harassment. She hesitated. Speaking publicly meant reliving trauma, making herself vulnerable again, but it also meant maybe preventing other students from experiencing what she had. After discussing it with Beckett, Sharon, and her parents, she agreed. The assembly was held in the auditorium, 2,000 students packed into seats, the air thick with the particular energy of mandatory attendance. Principal Reynolds gave opening remarks about Lincoln High's commitment to student safety, words that rang hollow given how recently they had failed to protect her, but at least he acknowledged that failure. Then Mrs. Carmichael introduced Inez. Walking onto that stage felt like stepping into combat. Her heart pounded, her hands were clammy. But she had faced worse than 2,000 judgmental teenagers. She had faced Trent Keller at his worst. She had faced her own demons about violence and restraint. This was just talking. "My name is Inez Solana," she began, her accent clear in the auditorium's acoustics. "I am an exchange student from Madrid. When I arrived at Lincoln High 3 months ago, I was excited to learn about American culture, to make friends, to have experiences I could not have in Spain. Instead, I learned what it feels like to be systematically humiliated for being different." She told her story, not all of it, edited for school-appropriate content, but the essential truth. The mockery of her accent, the social isolation, the cafeteria incident, the escalation of harassment while adults looked away. She did not name Trent specifically, though everyone knew who she meant. She talked about feeling powerless, about the weight of being targeted daily, about seriously considering leaving America early because the harassment was unbearable. "But I want to tell you something important," she continued. "I am not just a victim. I have training in martial arts and self-defense. I could have hurt my attackers badly if I wanted to. But I chose not to, because violence should always be the last option. For weeks, I tried peace. I tried ignoring it. I tried reporting it through proper channels, and nothing changed. Only when I was forced to defend myself physically did people finally pay attention. That is not how it should work." She looked out at the audience, finding familiar faces. Fatima nodding encouragement, Beckett with his hand over his heart, Marcus giving a subtle thumbs up, Riley wiping tears, and there, in the back, Trent Keller, watching with an unreadable expression. "I am not telling you this story so you will fear me or think I am special. I'm telling you because bullying only works when good people stay silent. For every person who harassed me, there were 10 more who saw it happening and did nothing. Teachers who looked away, students who felt bad but did not intervene, a system that protected the bully because his family had money and power. All of you were complicit through your silence." The auditorium was dead quiet. She could hear her own breathing through the microphone. "But I also want to say that people can change. The person who hurt me most has apologized and is working to be better. That took courage, and I respect it, even though I am still hurt by what happened. Change is possible, but only if we demand it. Only if we decide that cruelty is not acceptable just because it is convenient or entertaining or because the cruel person has power." She finished her speech with a direct challenge that every person in this auditorium had a choice every day to either enable cruelty or stand against it. That silence was a choice with consequences. That standing up for others might be uncomfortable or risky, but it was necessary. That she was speaking publicly not for herself, but for every other student who was being targeted right now in this school, who felt as isolated and helpless as she had felt 3 months ago. When she finished, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then someone started clapping, then more. Then the entire auditorium erupted in applause that lasted several minutes. Students were crying, nodding, some looking guilty, others inspired. It was not the kind of polite assembly applause that dies quickly. This was genuine, sustained, cathartic. After the assembly, dozens of students approached her, some to apologize for their inaction, some to share their own bullying experiences, some to thank her for speaking truth publicly. One girl, a freshman Ines had never spoken to, was sobbing as she explained that she had been planning to switch schools because of harassment, but hearing Ines speak made her feel less alone, made her realize she did not have to disappear. That night, Sharon Hendricks gave Ines the longest hug she had received since Mateo died. "You are so brave," Sharon whispered, "so incredibly brave." "I was just honest. Honesty, when everyone expects silence, is bravery." The assembly's impact rippled through Lincoln High in unexpected ways. Teachers who had previously ignored harassment suddenly paid attention. The administration implemented new reporting procedures. Student groups formed around anti-bullying initiatives. It was not perfect. Institutions changed slowly, and some students would always be cruel. But the culture shifted noticeably. There was less tolerance for public humiliation, more students willing to intervene when they saw harassment, a sense that maybe things could be different. Winter break came with welcome relief. 2 weeks without the pressure of school, just time with the Hendricks family and Beckett. They went skiing in the mountains. Ines had learned in the Pyrenees as a child and discovered Colorado snow was different but equally beautiful. They celebrated a Colorado Christmas that was nothing like Madrid's traditions, but was warm and inclusive. Beckett gave her a first-edition Spanish poetry collection he had found at an antique bookstore. She gave him a framed photo of them at Red Rocks. Sharon and Tom gave her snow boots and a new winter coat and made her feel like she truly belonged. On New Year's Eve, at a party with their friend group, Beckett pulled Ines onto a balcony overlooking Denver's downtown lights. "I have a question," he said nervously. "Yes?" "At the end of the school year, you're supposed to go back to Spain. But have you thought about maybe staying longer? Like, I know it's complicated with visas and your parents and everything, but I have thought about it, Ines interrupted. Every day I think about it, because I am happy here now, because I have you and Fatima and Sharon and Tom and friends and a life that feels real, but also, you miss home. I miss parts of home, my parents, my grandmother, the city I know better than anywhere else. Madrid will always be my home, but Colorado is starting to feel like home also. That's good, right? Having two homes. It is good. And also hard, because eventually I will have to choose. They kissed as fireworks erupted over the city, Denver celebrating the new year with explosions of color and light. And Ines thought about futures and choices and the strange paths life took. A year ago, she could not have imagined this, standing in Colorado, kissing an American boy who saw her for who she actually was, having survived a trial that had tested everything she believed about herself, coming out stronger and clearer on the other side. January brought the second semester with its own challenges and victories. Ines joined the track team. Running had always been her refuge, and now she could do it as part of a community. She started tutoring students in Spanish, earning money and respect simultaneously. She and Fatima taught a self-defense workshop for female students, basic techniques focused on awareness and escape rather than combat. The workshop was so popular, they had to repeat it 3 times. In February, a journalist from the Denver Post contacted the school, wanting to write an article about bullying and intervention programs. They wanted to interview Ines. After discussing it with her parents and the Hendricks family, she agreed. The resulting article, titled "The Exchange Student Who Fought Back One Girl's Stand Against Bullying," went semi-viral in educational circles. Ines received emails from students across the country sharing similar experiences, from parents thanking her for speaking out, from educators using her story as a case study in what not to do. The attention was uncomfortable but also affirming. Her experience had meant something beyond herself. That was worth the discomfort. March brought an unexpected development. Trent Keller, who had largely avoided Ines since his apology, approached her in the library where she was studying with Beckett. "Can I talk to you? Both of you?" They exchanged glances but nodded. Trent sat down, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "So I've been working with my therapist on making amends," he began. "And one of the things she suggested was that instead of just apologizing, I should do something active to make things better. So I talked to Principal Reynolds about starting a program, like peer mediation mixed with intervention training, teaching students how to recognize bullying and actually step in to stop it. And I want you both to help me develop it." Ines stared at him. "You want me to help you create an anti-bullying program? I know it sounds insane, but you're the person who experienced what I did, and you're the person who had the courage to stop it. Your perspective would be valuable, and Beckett's too, since he stood up when he didn't have to." Trent looked genuinely nervous. "I'm trying to be better. This is part of that." "Why should we help you?" Beckett asked, not hostile but skeptical. "You could do this program without us, because a program created by the former bully alone would be bullshit. It needs the voice of someone who was targeted. It needs to be real, not just PR for the school. And honestly, working with you would force me to stay accountable. I'm still learning not to be an asshole. Having you involved would help with that." Ines considered this carefully. She could say no. She had no obligation to help rehabilitate Trent Keller's reputation or ease his guilty conscience, but the program he was describing could actually help other students. And watching him work to change himself, uncomfortable, difficult, genuine change, that could be powerful. "I will consider it," she said finally, "but I have conditions. First, I need to see a detailed proposal. Second, the program must prioritize victim voices, not perpetrator redemption. Third, You do not get to use this for college applications or personal credit. This is about helping others, not yourself. And fourth, if you return to your old behavior at any point, I am done immediately. Fair? All fair? Trent looked relieved. Thank you for even considering it. After he left, Beckett shook his head. Character development continues. Who is this guy, and what did he do with Trent Keller? People can change, Ines said, if they choose to. If they are willing to do the uncomfortable work. I think he is trying. Yeah, I think so too. Doesn't mean I've forgotten what he did. No, we never forget. But maybe we can move forward anyway. The program developed slowly through spring. Trent, Ines, Beckett, and a faculty advisor worked on curriculum focused on bystander intervention, recognizing abuse, supporting victims, and creating reporting systems that actually worked. They piloted it with freshman volunteers, revised based on feedback, and presented their model to the school board. Keller Sr. attended that presentation, and watching his son speak about taking responsibility for harm done, about learning from mistakes, about using privilege to help rather than hurt, it was clear the father was processing some complicated emotions. April brought college acceptance letters. Beckett got into his top choice, Georgetown's School of Foreign Service. Ines had applied to several American universities at Sharon's encouragement, mostly as an exercise since she assumed she would return to Spain. But then acceptance letters started arriving. University of Colorado Boulder, University of Denver, Colorado State, all offering international student packages, all making it financially possible to stay. You could stay, Beckett said when she showed him the letters. You could finish high school here, then go to college in Colorado. My parents want me to return. I have not told them about the acceptances. Why not? Because telling them makes it real. Makes it a choice I have to actually make rather than something theoretical. Ines, you're going to have to choose eventually. I know, I do not know what the right answer is. That night she called her mother. It was late morning in Madrid, her mother at work, but taking the call anyway when she saw it was Ines. Cariño, is everything okay? And Ines told her everything. About the bullying at the beginning, about fighting back, about making friends and finding belonging, about Beckett and the Hendricks family and the life she had built in Colorado, about the college acceptances and the choice she was facing. Why did you not tell us about the bullying when it was happening? Her mother asked, hurt evident in her voice. Because I did not want you to worry, and because I needed to handle it myself, to prove to myself that I could. And the fighting. Using what Mateo taught you. I tried not to, Mama. I tried so hard, but eventually there was no other choice. And I think it would have made Mateo proud, that I used his lessons to protect myself and others, not to prove something or feed my ego. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. Then, your father and I have talked about this possibility. That you might want to stay in America? We miss you terribly. But we also want you to be happy, and if Colorado makes you happy, you would let me stay. We would support your choice. We raised you to be independent, to make your own decisions. This is your life, Ines. You get to choose where you want to live it. After they hung up, Ines sat with the weight of possibility. She could stay. She could build a life here, go to college with Beckett, continue the friendships she had made, keep training and teaching and becoming whoever she was meant to become. It was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. May brought the end of the school year rushing closer. Finals, last assignments, senior pranks that Ines watched from a distance. The peer mediation program officially launched, with Trent as one of several trained mediators. Watching him work with younger students who were experiencing bullying, offering support and resources and genuine empathy, was surreal, but also affirming. People really could change. The last week of school, Lincoln High held its annual International Day celebration. Ines had helped organize the Spanish culture booth, worked with Fatima on a presentation about immigrant experiences in America, and somehow been convinced to give a martial arts demonstration. That last one had terrified her. Performing felt like showing off, like becoming the thing she had tried not to be. But Sharon convinced her it was educational, that showing controlled technique could be empowering for other students. The demonstration took place in the gymnasium before an audience of several hundred students. Ines wore her GI, the first time she had put it on since leaving Spain, and felt Mateo's presence more strongly than she had in months. She demonstrated basic forms, explained principles of leverage and control, and then, at Fatima's insistence, asked for volunteers to show defensive techniques. Trent Keller raised his hand. The gymnasium went silent. He stood up from the bleachers and walked to the mat, stopping a respectful distance from Ines. "I volunteer to demonstrate what it looks like when someone bigger uses their size advantage improperly," he said clearly, "and how someone smaller can defend themselves effectively with proper technique, if Ines is willing to demonstrate on me again." The subtext was clear. This was public acknowledgement, apology, and accountability all at once. He was offering to let her throw him again, publicly, as demonstration that the power dynamic had permanently shifted. Ines looked at him carefully. This could be a trap, but his expression was open, genuine, vulnerable in a way Trent Keller had never been before. "Okay," she said, "but I will control the fall, so you are not hurt. I trust you." And somehow, that changed everything. That Trent Keller, who had terrorized her for weeks, was now standing on a mat in front of the whole school saying he trusted her not to hurt him. She demonstrated the hip throw again, slower this time, explaining body mechanics, showing how technique defeated size, controlling his fall so he landed safely. The gymnasium erupted in applause. Afterward, as Trent stood up and bowed respectfully, a formal martial arts bow that someone had clearly taught him, he said quietly, "Thank you for giving me a chance to be better." "Thank you for taking that chance," she replied. The last day of school was bittersweet. Yearbooks were signed, promises to stay in touch were made, the particular chaos of endings filled the hallways. Ines stood at her locker, packing up her things, thinking about how different this moment was from what she had imagined in August. "So," Beckett said, appearing beside her, "have you decided?" She had. The decision had crystallized slowly through conversations with her parents, with Sharon and Tom, with herself. She was staying. She would finish her senior year at Lincoln High, then attend CU Boulder. She would visit Spain over summers, maintain her connections there, but Colorado would be her home base. It was terrifying and right in equal measure. "I am staying," she told Beckett, "if you still want me to." His smile was incandescent. "Hell yes, I want you to. Colorado needs you. I need you." "That is good, because I need you also." They kissed in the hallway, not caring who saw, celebrating the future they would build together. Around them, students headed towards summer vacation, toward whatever came next, and Ines felt something she had not felt in a long time, certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The final assembly of the year brought one last surprise. Principal Reynolds announced the creation of the Ines Solana Courage Award, to be given annually to a student who demonstrated exceptional bravery in standing up for themselves or others in the face of adversity. The first recipient was a freshman girl who had reported a teacher for harassment, the same girl who had thanked Ines after the anti-bullying assembly. The girl accepted her award with tears and pride. And when she looked at Ines in the audience and mouthed, "Thank you," Ines understood that survival was not just personal. What you survived, how you survived it, that became a gift you could give others. Summer arrived with Colorado's perfect mountain weather. Ines spent it working at a local community center, teaching self-defense classes, training at the gym, going on adventures with Beckett and her friends, and settling into her new, permanent status. The Hendricks family officially became her legal guardians for the remainder of her time in high school. Her parents visited in July, meeting Beckett and Sharon and Tom, touring Colorado, and crying tears of both sadness and joy that their daughter had found a second home. One evening in late August, a year after her arrival, Ines stood in her room at the Hendricks house, her room now, not temporary space, looking at photos of Mateo pinned to her bulletin board. She touched his face in the picture, smiled at his cocky expression. "I think I finally understand what you were trying to teach me," she said to his image. "That strength is not about how hard you can hit. It is about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy, about protecting others without losing yourself, about standing up for what is right even when it costs you something. You could not follow your own lessons, but I can follow them for both of us. I think that would make you happy." She heard Beckett's car pull up outside. They were going to a movie, just a normal summer night, and she smiled at the normalcy of it. Normal was a gift she had earned through surviving what was not normal. She grabbed her jacket, told Sharon and Tom she would be back by 11, and walked out into the evening air. Lincoln High School stood a few blocks away, visible from the corner, its brick facade familiar now rather than intimidating. In a few weeks, she would walk those halls again, but this time as someone who belonged, someone who had faced her worst fears and come through them transformed. Not unchanged. She carried scars from what had happened, would always carry them. But stronger for having survived, wiser for having learned what she was capable of when pushed to her limit. And most importantly, she had learned that mercy was not weakness, that choosing peace whenever possible was not cowardice, that she could honor Mateo's memory and lessons without repeating his mistakes, that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was stop fighting when you had already won. Beckett smiled as she approached the car. "Ready?" "Yes," Ines said. "I am ready." And she was. Ready for whatever came next. Ready to face challenges with confidence instead of fear. Ready to stand up for others the way others had eventually stood up for her. Ready to be exactly who she had become through surviving the worst and choosing in the end to be better than those who had tried to break her. The foreign exchange student who had arrived, terrified and isolated, who had been mocked for her accent and targeted for her difference, had transformed into a young woman who knew her own strength and chose when and how to use it, who had taught her tormentor that cruelty had consequences, who had shown a whole school that silence enabled harm, who had proven that speaking truth, even when it made you vulnerable, was the most powerful weapon of all. They mocked her accent. She taught them respect. They tried to break her. She showed them mercy. They underestimated her. She revealed herself only when necessary. And in the end, she did not make them beg in her language. She made them understand that dignity, courage, and restraint spoke louder than any words in any language. She had won not by destroying her enemies, but by refusing to become them. And that was the victory that mattered. As they drove away into the summer evening, Ines looked back at the neighborhood she now called home, at the life she had built from ashes, and understood that survival was not about escaping unchanged. It was about being transformed by fire and emerging stronger, clearer, more certain of who you were and who you refused to become. She had survived. She had fought when necessary, and shown mercy when possible. She had honored her brother's memory while forging her own path, and she had learned that sometimes the people who seem most unlike you, Americans in Colorado, so different from her Spanish upbringing, could become the most like family if you gave them the chance. The story that began with cruelty and isolation had ended with connection and strength. Not because the world had become less cruel, but because Ines Solana had learned she was strong enough to face cruelty and compassionate enough not to perpetuate it. That was the lesson. That was the victory. That was the life she would continue building, one choice at a time, for as long as she walked this earth. And somewhere, she liked to think, Mateo was watching and smiling at the woman his little sister had become.